everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Andrea and in this video you'll be seeing me setting up my bullet journal for 2026. For my bullet journal this year I will be using the Archer & Olive A5 Snowdrop Dotted Journal from their Winter 2025 Snow and Stillness collection. This is the first time I'm using a journal in this color, as I usually tend to go for a beige or a tan or sometimes a deep green. However, as you'll see later on, I'm trying to incorporate a bit more color and pattern in my life this year, and I thought this would be a good choice to start with my bullet journal. Before I started recording the video, I glued the first dotted page together with the back of the name page, as it's usually a bit more fiddly to work with. I will begin the setup with my 2026 cover spread. I usually keep it pretty simple and to the right hand page, as I tend to use the left hand page for my grid spacing guide. I will be using some of the Tombow Duo brush pens as well as Faber Castel 01 Fineliners and UniPin 03 and 003 Fineliners with this setup. Because I knew I was gonna do several spreads, I wanted to keep this first spread fairly easy and straightforward. So I would say that the decorative elements of this setup is quite beginner friendly, as it's also easy to switch any colors that you already have at home. I typically go for any type of floral themes for all of my setups and spreads in my bullet journal, and I've been doing so since I started about 6 years ago. Mainly because I really love nature and vegetal elements, but also because I find it works best with what I personally want from my journal. Although I really appreciate and love seeing every bullet journal that has more intricate or complex designs, they always astound me and I find them very, very creative. After having drawn in all of the little leaves, I added the outlines for the numbers, and I then go in with some final details on the page. I'm using a brush side of the brush pen to decorate the page, as well as one of the fine liners for smaller details. I often do this to add a more comprehensive feel to my spread or setup in a quick and easy way. Next up is my year at a glance spread. I think a lot of people also call this their future log. I use this spread mainly for birthdays and important dates such as my wedding day or any other special events that I want to remember a little bit extra. An example of such an event this year is that I will be visiting Comic-Con together with my sister, and it's the first time in probably 10 years that she and I are doing something special like that together. I typically don't write up appointments and stuff in this spread, as I also use a shared digital calendar with my husband on my phone. For the title of the page, I go in with the 990 brush pen from Tombow in light sand, and then the 942 in cappuccino on top of the lower half of the lettering, just to add a little bit more spice. To fit the months and make the spread a little bit more interesting, I'm using a Dutch door setup. I will be fitting 2 months on each page, as well as plenty of vertical space under each month. Previous years I've used a 6-month layout and had space for notes on the side. However, I have a few months like March with a lot of birthdays, and I found it ended up a bit too cluttered for my liking, and I never ended up using the notes section on the side, so I decided to switch my setup a little bit this time. I fill in the dates for each month with the help of a calendar that I have off screen. However, even with that, I managed to mess up a little. It's an easy fix though, and I ended up taking just a piece of scrap dotted paper, cut it to size and glued it on top of the week that I messed up in May. And then I can write the correct dates on top of that. I add the vertical boxes beneath each month and highlight every other line with an accent color matching the color of the month. And again, I managed to accidentally mess up the May through August spread as I drew the boxes smaller than I intended. After this, I move on to the next spread, which is a 2026 intentions and then a vision board to the page next to it. This is a highly inspired spread by another creator, Anna Bruns, here on YouTube. I saw her doing these spreads with her own bullet journal, and I really liked the idea, even if I ended up using some different topics. I really like the idea of working with intentions for the year instead of concrete goals. Goals can feel a bit too rigid, whereas intentions more so feel like guidelines and a reminder to what I find more important for me to work on and towards in my life. So some of my intentions for 2026 are to find joy in movement and work with my health in ways that I like and prefer. Be attentive in my relationships, which is something that I will talk a little bit more about in a bit. Minimize use of saved money and be thrifty when looking for new things to purchase. And also allowing myself creative time and outlets in my everyday life. For the vision board, I also went with a similar layout to Anna, and I went with a grid layout to which I added pictures later on. Much like Anna, I also became a first-time mom during 2025, and my 2026 will be spent much on parental leave. Where I live, I'm lucky to be allowed an extensive parental leave, and I will have lots of time to spend with my baby, but I also want to be intentional with that time in regards to other aspects of my life. I printed out some pictures that I want to represent my year that I found on Pinterest, as well as mixed in some of my own pictures. One of the pictures is a photo of my dog, as you can see in the upper left on the page. Even if I became a first-time mom this year, he's technically my first baby. He will be turning 9 this year, so he's a senior, and it's been more noticeable during 2025 that he is getting older. Usually when I work, he's spending his day at the daycare that he really loves, but with me being home on parental leave, we have lowered his amount of days for him at the daycare. So the choice is both out of a money saving aspect, as it's quite expensive with daycare, but it's also for him to be allowed to slow down a little and to spend more time together with us this year. Aside from spending more time with him, I also want to find my way back to my style in terms of fashion, as that's something that I'm quite interested in. I want to spend time with my baby and with my dog and also in nature. And also I want to work more on my archery skills this year. I picked up archery in the end of 2024, but I had to take a break from it during the pregnancy, but I am looking forward to getting back into it. I will get back to this spread after finishing my setup and add some more personal pictures and maybe also a quote that I feel aligned with me this year, but I wanted to keep those pictures out of the video. Next up is my health and habit spread. Here I will be tracking my period once it comes back from the pregnancy, as well as some other things. Since I'm currently breastfeeding, I have no idea when my period will come back or if it even does this year. I also have PCOS, so tracking my period is something that I find important in terms of my health as well. Because of this, I added a little note section to the side of the period tracker so that I can write down things that might come up and that I find important to make a note of. On the other side of the spread, I added some space to note my favorite workouts. This is part of my health intention for this year. Aside from archery, I did do some free weightlifting before I got pregnant and in the early stages of my pregnancy. I had some movements that I really liked, and I like to make note of them when it comes to putting together a workout schedule or a program for myself this year. I also added some space for me to track some general health data. I will be following up my blood pressure this year after the pregnancy. I also had gestational diabetes at the end of stages of my pregnancy, so I will be doing some follow-up testing for that as well. The next spread is a spread I called A Year with B. It's a space for me to write a little bit about each month with the baby. I wanted this spread to be a space for me to either write about my experiences with her for each month or write a short letter to her about each month of her first year. This is also in line with my intentions regarding my relationships and a way for me and my husband to commemorate our first year with our daughter. I am again using a Dutch door design to make the spread feel a bit more comprehensive with the header of the spread. I kept the decorations quite minimal for this spread, but highlighted every other line with one of the accent colors, alternating between each month. Next up is a bit of a mix of a spread. I usually do a gift and wish list section as well as a bucket list and faves list, which is more of a fun thing than something practical. The gift and wish list are a section to the baby, my husband and me, and then an overall others list for other family members or friends. The list for the baby is larger, but it's also mostly so that I can note down things that we are looking to get to her later on, or that can be sent as a wish list to grandparents or other family members. The bucket list is something that I move with me from my previous bullet journal to the next. It's quite similar to a goals list in my opinion, but something that's more of a fun thing for me. For example, I had compete in an archery competition on my bucket list for last year. This was before I knew I was pregnant, and in the end, I wasn't able to work towards that goal in 2025. So for that reason, it's something that I will be moving with me to my bucket list again, even if I don't think it's something that I will achieve this year. The faves list is also more of a fun addition. It's a space for me to note down things that I really liked during the year, be it food, movies, music, or something else. The next spread I call Vinted Statistics. Vinted is an app that I think is available in several parts of Europe. It's an app for thrifting, basically similar to Poshmark in the US. I started getting into Vinted last year in preparation for baby's arrival, as well as finding things for both me and my husband on the secondhand market. Since babies grow out of their clothing pretty fast, I decided to track and follow my sales and purchases on Vinted during 2026. This is set up in a very simple way, only for me to track the item, date and sale or purchase and the price, mostly as a fun thing. In the end of the year, I want to get an overview of how much I ended up using the app, both in terms of selling secondhand, but also purchasing new things. I ended up with 3 spreads with a Dutch store design in this layout to give myself proper room for noting all of these things down. Because we have prepared clothing items for her most of the year, as well as being gifted and buying some stuff new for the baby, I decided to make the space to note down bought items smaller than the space to note down sold items, because I imagine that I will be selling more than buying off of this app this year. After that, I decided to make a little social media page. I have a notion of wanting to get into recording my monthly setups and posting them on YouTube, as well as short form content for Instagram if I manage to figure out how to make it. So for that reason, I decided to have a small tracker with a 3-month increment for followers, as well as high and low traffic posts, so I can see how different topics performed. I've not given myself a huge amount of space for this, but my idea is that I can make some sort of note about what's been performing better or worse with this space. Next up, I have my master to-do list. This is also something that I had in my bullet journal for the last couple of years. It's a space for me to note down some long-term tasks or tasks that require more planning. Things such as cleaning out the garage, defrost the freezer, or wash the outside of every window of the house, for example. I guess it's similar to a when did I last list, but without any dates. Most of the things that end up on this list are put there at the early stages of the year and then worked off during the year. The next and last spread I will be setting up is what I call my creative corner. One of my intentions for 2026 is to allow myself creative outlets. My bullet journal is one of these outlets, and my hopes is that this channel could be another. So the creative corner will hopefully be used for me to plan some content, post about other creative ideas that I might have, or just, as a sort of brain dump, I guess. I ended up mostly just highlighting every other line to create writing space, and then added boxes at the bottom for any finalized thoughts or things that I decide are completed thoughts, by which I mean fully formed creative ideas. For some finishing touches, I will be moving my grid spacing guide from my previous bullet journal into this one, as well as making a pocket for it eventually. As you can see in my previous bullet journal, I do have a key that I use as well, and I will be adding the same key onto the pocket in a similar manner this year. Hopefully, if you watched this video, you found it somewhat interesting or inspirational. If that's the case, please give this video a little like and me a follow, and hopefully I will see you in the next video as well. Bye!